So part 3, we've just sent our samples off to the company, the DNA company, and they have sent us back our test results. Well, there are 3 possible options that we can have on this. The first result we get back will be a clear result. That means that our dog hasn't inherited a copy of the disease from either its mother or its father, and therefore won't suffer symptoms or won't have a problem with the disease for the whole of its life. The second result that we can get back is a carrier status, and that means that your dog has inherited 1 copy of the disease from its mother or from its father, but like the first result that we had, it won't suffer symptoms and won't have a problem with the disease for the whole of its life, even though it is carrying the disease. However, even though the dog shows no symptoms, if we were to breed that dog, we would pass the condition on to the dog's offspring. The third condition we get, which is the one we don't want, is how these genes work. These genes are what is known as recessive genes, and there has to be a copy of the gene passed from both sides of the mating, so one from the mother and one from the father. When that gene is passed from both sides, unfortunately we get the third result, which is called unaffected. That means that the dog has the condition and will suffer from the condition and will have symptoms of it at some point during its life. Again, same thing here is that even if the dog isn't showing symptoms, if we mate and breed the dog, the offspring will have the condition. Now, the interesting thing about these DNA conditions is it can affect some dogs from birth. Other dogs, it might be 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years before they start to show symptoms. But whether the dog shows symptoms or not, it is still able to pass the condition out. So what are the 3 conditions that the Welsh Spaniel will suffer from? Well, the first one is called factor 7 deficiency. And this is a blood clotting disorder. And again, it could affect the puppy at birth. So you could cut the umbilical and the puppy could just bleed out and die as it's born. Or it could be 2-3 years before the symptoms start to show, at which time you could be taking your dog to the vets for an operation. And unfortunately, the dog could just bleed out on the table because we didn't know it had this condition. The second of the 3 conditions is DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. Now, obviously by its title, this is a heart condition, and this will see your dog's life cut in half. So you're probably going to get 6, 7, maybe 8 years out of your dog before it passes. The third condition is FN. This is a kidney disorder, and unfortunately, this will see your dog die after 2 years maximum. Now, these are conditions at a cellular level. There are no medications that can fix this. There are no operations that can fix this. When your dog has it, your dog has it. So looking at how severe these conditions are and looking at how damaging they can be, again, why wouldn't you test your dog if you were breeding? And that's where it can go, oh, so out of control so very quickly. I'm going to work through 2 very simple examples for you, one with testing and one without testing, just to show you how, in my opinion, how valuable testing is and how much better. If we start with a dog, it could be a boy, it could be a girl, doesn't matter, and we want to mate. Now, we'll take this at this moment in time, we're not testing, so the dog isn't tested, and we're looking for a mate. We find a mate who also isn't tested, we do a mating, and we have a litter of puppies. Now, unfortunately, the father and the mother of this litter were both carriers for factor 7 deficiency, the blood clotting disorder. Now, outwardly, both these dogs were healthy. They wouldn't have symptoms or suffer from this condition for the whole of their lives. However, that cannot be said the same for the litter. Now, I'm going to start talking about ratios, 25%, 75%, 50%. These are what I call genetic ratios. They are the numbers that come out of certain breeding conditions. As I go through the examples, you'll see what I mean. They're not 100% accurate, as in you don't just get 50% affected one way or the other. There is a bit of fluctuation, but that is really what the genetic people call the ratio of what you're going to get out of the breeding. So, as I said, they have the litter that's born. Half of that litter will be born as carriers, 50% will be born as carriers for this condition and will not suffer from the condition, will have a problem with it for the whole of their lives. but again, can still pass it on if they carry on being bred. The other half of the litter, unfortunately, aren't so lucky. They have come out as affecteds and have the condition. Now, it could affect them from the first moment they're born. They could be born, you could cut the umbilical and they could just bleed out and die there and then. Or again, it could be 2-3 years before it starts to affect them. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they don't die at birth, and we now decide to keep a girl back for another breeding. Now, because we haven't tested, we stand a 50% chance of picking a girl that's a carrier, or a 50% chance of picking a girl that is an affected. So just for differences of figures, we'll pick an affected girl, just so you can see how things change. So that girl gets old enough and we decide to breed her, and again, we're still not testing, but as you can see how one mating produces a whole litter of puppies with the condition in. That's happening in a few places, and the longer it goes on, the more easy it comes to pick up carriers or affected dogs for these conditions. So again, we mate this girl when she's old enough. We mate her this time with a carrier again. The puppies are born. Now this time in the breeding, we have 75% of those puppies that have the condition and could bleed out and die at birth. And only 25% of them are now carriers and won't be affected. In addition to that, the mother of the litter wasn't affected. So in reality, she might not have had symptoms at birth, but they could have come in as she's got a little bit older, and she could die from her blood not clotting during birth. She could die with puppies inside her. So as you can see from that untesting example, within 2 matings, we've just absolutely blown apart, absolutely smashed to pieces, a bloodline that looked healthy to start with. So if we take the same scenario and we take the dog, again, could be a boy, could be a girl, doesn't matter. Well, this time we decide to test. We test and we find that this dog is a carrier for factor 7. So what we do in this case is we look and find a tested partner for this mating, and we find a clear for factor 7. Now, when the puppies are born, we have a completely different result. We still have 50% of them that are carriers, but the other 50% are completely clear from the condition. So because we're testing, we test the girls, because we're still going to keep one back, and we find a girl that we like that is a clear. We grow her up, we find a mate for her, who we also test and find a clear, and we mate those two together. And once we get the puppies out, hey presto, 100% of that litter are no longer affected or have carrier statuses or anything. They're clear from that factor 7 condition. So in 2 matings, we have either smashed a bloodline to pieces or made it stronger and made it healthier. Why wouldn't you test? I just don't understand. Why wouldn't you test? So in the last part of this video, I'm going to talk about where things have come more recently and how I get to the point of believing that there is a need to test.